All right, what is up, folks? So glad to see you. Very much appreciate you hanging out with us, either live here on the stream or on the recording later. My name is Kevin Winter. I'm part of the Deno team working on developer relations and developer programs. I'm joined today by the lead for our CLI, or our Deno runtime team, Bartek. Bartek, thank you very much for hanging out with us this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and hello, everyone.
Awesome. Well, so the plan for us today is we just dropped a 1.38 release of the Deno runtime, which is actually in, I've been at Deno for about 5 months now, 5-6 months in that range. And this might be the biggest single package of updates that we have landed in a single release since I've been here, which is pretty exciting. We have hot module reloading. We have a new documentation generator, improved JSX transforms. There's actually quite a laundry list of features and improvements that made it into this release. And if you haven't checked it out, I am going to drop in the chat a link to the 138 blog post. So if you want to sort of take a more detailed look at everything that came out in the release, the blog post is a great place to do that. We'll have content actually coming out in the blog and for the rest of November and December, drilling into each of these areas, because there's actually quite a lot to unpack. But this is a good starting point to understand what's in the 138 release. So definitely check out the blog post if you haven't already. But today we do have a few demos set up for you that we'd like to show to kind of walk through these things in real time. And if you have any questions about the release or would like to see anything in greater depth, I am going to be checking out the chat. So make sure that you get those questions in. We'd be happy to answer any of those in real time as we can. But where I think we're going to start off is with a demo of something that is pretty cool, which is a automatic documentation generator that shipped in 138. So yeah, let's take it away. Let's see the demo. This is pretty fun.
Sure. So this documentation generator works the best if there's actually some documentation in your project. So we're going to use
seem like an important
project. Yeah, so we're going to use an existing project instead of creating a couple files from scratch, just to save some time. And well, Deno standard library is probably the best project to use it for. Maybe we could also try fresh if time permits. So first of all, let me actually show you some of the modules from Deno standard library, so we can see what we're talking about here. So let me close all of this and all of this, and let's pick some modules at random. So I'm going to start with assert, and assert here has
and Bartek, I think we still need to have a screen share from you.
My screen share, of course. Yes, I'm sorry for that.
Not a problem.
Right into it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Hopefully this is now visible. Sorry for that.
Yep,
so
good.
I'm in the Deno standard library repository. I selected a random directory. Let's start with assert. I hope this module actually contains a mod TS. That it does. That kind of re-exports all of the other modules. So maybe I will make it slightly smaller for the time being, so we can actually see that there is some documentation for the whole module as marked by this at module JSDoc tag, and there are a bunch of re-exports from different modules. So we got assert almost equals that has a few APIs exported, actually one API, and there's also JSDoc here. So let's try to generate a documentation for this particular module. So before this release, the Deno doc subcommand only had a terminal output. So I could do Deno doc, and I need to go to Deno std and assert and mod ts, and then it printed this whole huge wall of text that contains some links and some and documentation is displayed in line. This is somewhat useful for folks who like to live in the terminal, but most of us prefer to view documentation on the web. And while Deno had this ability before using dog Deno land website, we now gave you a way to actually generate this documentation yourself as a static page, so that you can then deploy it to your own server, make it public, make it private. So let's see how this works. I'm gonna do Deno doc and --HTML. If we just run this, it tells us that we need to specify the name. So usually you generate documentation for either your library or your app, and to show this nicely, we need to provide some name. So let's start with something simple. I'm just gonna say std assert is the name, and I want to output it to, I guess I don't need to specify this flag. Let's keep it simple for now. So Deno std assert and mod.ts, and we run it, and Deno just wrote 33 files to the docs directory. So let me try to run simple server. I'm actually going to run caddy, which provides a file server. And it's listening on port 80. So let me try to open up a browser window and go to this place. So I'm going to do localhost, and maybe just localhost will work. It won't. Localhost 80.
Yeah, that is weird.
Docs? Oh, yeah, there we go.
Oh, it has to be in the
okay,
docs.
so
Sure.
yeah, so this is the HTML output, and let me actually zoom in a little bit. You know what? Actually, we're gonna do a lot of demos here, so let me switch out from using Caddy to some other thing called file server that displays the link, and I can click it all the time. Okay, there we go. So I'm in the directory that we're gonna be using for all our demos, and I went to the docs directory, and this is the HTML output that is generated by Deno doc. So we see an index of all the symbols that are re-exported from the module we generated docs for, which was assert/mod.ts. So all the re-exports are automatically crawled, and they're listed here with a short snippet of their documentation. On the left-hand side, the sidebar has a nice split between classes, functions. There's also interfaces, variables, depending what your module is exporting. So actually, let's try to demo that. And to demo that, I'm going to re-invoke the same command, but I'm going to specify another path here. So Deno doc from this release actually now accepts multiple entry points or file paths that you can generate your documentation for. So let's do, what else do we have in this standard library that we could generate docs for? Let's see, we got assert, we got bytes.
Crypto is a good one. We got
crypto.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Testing for sure is a nice
streams.
one.
Let's try streams, because streams also has this mod.ts. So streams mod.ts. Okay, we got 64 files now. So if I run the file server again and visit the website and refresh it, I need to focus this window. Okay, I refreshed it, and now you can see that we got way more content on the left. So we got classes. One is from assertion error, so that's from the assert module, but buffer, byte slice, they seem to be coming from streams. And similarly, now we got some interfaces and type aliases. So this essentially just lists all of the public symbols that are available from the entry points we specified. And now we can essentially click around here and drill down into each particular symbol we're interested in. So byte slice stream extend is a class, and it extends the transform stream. There's some short documentation, and there's an example that we can click and see what's going on. Notice that there's no code highlighting yet, and let me tell you why. The idea for this feature was that this site is completely static, which is 95% true, because we got this search bar, which requires a little tiny bit of JavaScript. But fear not, this actually gracefully degrades. So if your browser has JavaScript disabled, this search bar will just not appear, and you won't be able to search through symbols. But the site will still be completely functional. You'll be able to go between these pages, click the links around and whatnot. So the reason why there's no code highlighting yet is because we try to do code highlighting on the server and just output already highlighted code. But we just kind of ran out of time, and we also ran out of time to do code highlighting in JavaScript. But fear not, this will be fixed at some point in the near future. So yeah,
this is kind of interesting with the. Sorry, like I just had a question about the example. So like there's an automatic like HTML details element that looks like it's generated for the example. Could we maybe show like byte slice stream in VS Code and kind of show like how the example is added like to the class?
Of course. So this is byte slice stream. So I go here and let me. So this is the class we were looking at, and the example is added by just adding a JSDoc to your class and then specifying the example JSDoc tag. Then that informs Deno doc that it should be rendered as an example. And we could add another example here. Example code fans for TS, and we'll do console log hello world. So obviously this is not a good example, but if I regenerate this and refresh,
I think we need to kick the server.
File server. Yeah. And now we got two examples. So it's awesome. Just easy as that. You can just add as many examples as you want. And yeah, I was just talking about the site being completely static with just a tiny little bit of JavaScript that is there to provide search functionality. So we can just type S, or we can click here and start typing. So let's look for a search. Oh, I misspelled that, but the search is good enough to actually figure out the spelling. So there's some fuzzy search going on that should be possible to search something even if you misspell it. There's some threshold and tolerance set up to be reasonably well and not just and don't show you anything if you misspell something. So yeah, we got all the symbols that contain assert here. There's also on the right hand side, you can see which module these are specified in, and we can essentially click on anyone and get to this module really, really quickly. So yeah, this is how the HTML generator looks like. There's also another new feature in Deno Doc that I'm also excited about, and this feature was essentially brought in to help ourselves first, to help us ensure our documentation and JS docs we write are of highest quality. And this feature is called Deno Doc Lint. So it's essentially a linter for your documentation. It will point out problems with documentation, like you're referencing a type on your public API, but that type is not exported. So suddenly users sometimes might run into issues where they need to reference this type but can't because you have not exported it. Or maybe you just forgot to add JSDoc altogether. So let's try this out. Again, I'm going to use the assert module here and .ts, why not? And let's see. Well, hopefully this should report no problems, but since we just shipped it, we're getting up to speed on fixing these lint errors. There we go. We got 16 documentation diagnostics pointed out by Deno.lint. So let's see. In the assertion error, there's a missing JS documentation comment. So why don't we see this assertion error file? And this is line number 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, indeed, we have a class exported here. So this is publicly available, but this class has no JS documentation. So we haven't really said anything about this class. So let's try to quickly fix it. A base class. of error that is raised when any of the asserts function fails. And let's rerun it again. And sure enough, now there is only 15 documentation diagnostics.
Yeah.
Similarly, missing return type probably will tell us something is off here. So this is line 18 and this is line 18. So export function assert not equals does not have an explicit return type. So here's the funny thing. So this function doesn't have a return type because it's supposed to return nothing. So on one hand, this can be automatically inferred by TypeScript. The problem is, what if you actually wanted to, or actually you don't want to change the return type. You want it to not return anything or return undefined, but suddenly I made a mistake here. TypeScript should complain that something is wrong, but it doesn't because it's inferring the type. So suddenly I'm returning 0 here. So the return type of this function is now number, but I don't want it to return a number. It should return undefined or nothing or something. Suddenly, like I made a mistake. Maybe I just made a typo or I just catwalked over my keyboard and then I saved this file. So suddenly the contract gets broken, but there's another reason why it's useful to explicitly type the return type here, is that it speeds up type checking of your project, maybe by just tiny little bit, because TypeScript does not have to infer this type anymore. But if you have thousands of APIs, this will add up, and you might see an actual difference in speed of type checking. So let's say this is void. So we wanted to return nothing. And now, if I made the same mistake, a cat went over my keyboard and suddenly a 0 appeared here, there we go. TypeScript will complain that, hey, this function is supposed to be void, but now you are returning a number. So in some cases, these lints might seem a little obnoxious, maybe, similarly with what Deno lint is pointing out, but I assure you we added these lints to make our code better. Maybe it's a little more verbose, maybe there's a little more ceremony, but it's for the benefit of your users or yourself. Yeah, so
Yeah.
your new
Awesome.
features of Deno Doc that's shipped in version 1.38.
Awesome. So there was one good question in the chat about styling the generated documentation. So I believe the static files that are generated, you can certainly add custom CSS to be loaded within them. But are there any sort of built-in hooks to, include a static file in the build or anything like that, or would that be kind of a post-processing thing developers would do themselves for now?
Right. So currently, as it stands, there are no hooks for that, but this is definitely something that we recognize as useful and have plans to address in the future. Is my screen still shared? I just wanted to show the
Sorry, I
output
was.
of
I
the.
think I might have
Okay.
bumped something by mistake. Sorry about that.
Okay, so if we inspect the generated documentation, we're in this docs directory that we generated, and let's visit any file, let's say handler, why not? You will see that this is a really simple and dumb HTML markup. There's not many classes or not many style sheets going on. Essentially, we ship only a single style sheet called style CSS, and the style sheet is barely 400 lines. There's no preprocessor, SCS, SAS, or anything like this. So it's very, very minimal and bare bones, and that's on purpose. So if you want, you can just copy your own styles into here or replace our style sheet with your own, but certainly maybe a CLI flag or some other configuration to pull in additional styles that you specify might show up in the future for this feature.
Definitely. So, yeah, so I think that that is a good answer to the question. Though I will say, like, if folks are very excited about doing this in the near future, as like sort of a post build step, it certainly would be possible to add your own CSS and do some amount of modification to the content. But right now, there just aren't hooks that
Right.
exist
So
within the.
maybe just for visibility, I'd like to point you to the Deno doc repository. So this is github.com/Deno/Deno doc. And we already opened up a bunch of issues that are tagged with the HTML label that we want to implement or think should be implemented. So if you feel like contributing or playing around with this project, I highly recommend visiting this website and maybe trying to suggest more features or trying to implement something yourself. We always highly value community contributions and are very welcome to do so.
Yeah, for sure. And styling the docs obviously is very much a bread and butter thing. So we'll definitely be picking that up at some point in the near future. Another question came in about is the new doc site using Fresh? And I can actually take this one. So the docs.deno.com is actually using Docusaurus as the sort of backing documentation engine. And that's for like a couple reasons. Like number one, like Docusaurus just has a lot of nice features out of the box, like Algolia integration. It automatically generates a sitemap. You can have like multiple sets of documentation that are versioned independently, which is, I think, something that we're going to leverage in the future. So we definitely could have built it in Fresh, but Docusaurus has just like a lot of nice like documentation platform features that we're leveraging. And in terms of deploying it, it's, we'd statically generate the site using Docusaurus, but then there's actually a Hono server that sits on top of it and serves the static assets. It's deployed on Deno Deploy. But that Hono server also like handles redirects, and in the future, I think is also going to have some like dynamic routes as well that actually do some more data oriented stuff versus just serving static assets and handling redirects. But even just having something dynamic to handle redirects is super useful as well. So that's kind of the tech stack for the new docs. And just because it's right next to it, and by the way, there have been a couple questions in the chat that are excellent questions that are not specifically scoped to 138 that we'll get to at the end. So there's another question about like Fresh and Storybook and stuff like that. So fear not, for those of you that did ask those questions, we'll get to those at the end as well, because we'd love to dig into any topics that are interesting to folks. But I think what we are going to take a look at next is the hot module replacement functionality that dropped in 138 as well, which actually is related to Fresh in that like this is something that a lot of frameworks can leverage to great effect to like provide a better developer experience. And Fresh, I think, will definitely be one of the early customers, if you will, of this particular feature. So let's dig into that maybe.
Okay, sure. So sharing my screen again. I'm gonna do this a lot today. Okay, HMRs or whole hot module replacements. So let me start with Deno init, and I'm gonna do HMR demo, and I'm going to go to this directory. It's demo, not Deno. Just to make sure everything works. Yes, everything works. Okay, so let's see. We got an empty project here. We don't need this test file, and we don't need the log file for now. Let's just focus on this main file. So as some of you might already know, Deno ships with a file watcher by default. So let me try to present it here, though I will need to zoom out a little bit so we can see both terminal and code right here. So if I do Deno run main.ts, then this is executed, program finishes, we're done. So it's not so nice if I want to change this 2 to be 5 and then rerun it, and especially since I don't know the keyboard shortcut to switch between terminal and editor, that's a long feedback loop. So we can do Deno run -- watch, and now our program finishes and keeps track if this file has changed or any of its dependencies for this matter. And it will just rerun this program when you do change the file. So let's replace these files with force. And there we go. Just restarted the program, run it again, and I didn't have to switch between my windows. So just to show you, let's move this add function out into a separate file called add.ts. Why not? And now I will just import this add from add.ts. And there we go. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, did I not enable Deno here? Yeah, there we go. Sorry for that. Yeah, I haven't updated my VS Code in a couple of weeks, so I still had to do this manually, but no more for those who are on the latest VS Code extension. All right, so we now import this function from a separate file. So if we change something here, then I'm gonna essentially just add b twice and rerun it. Sure enough, Deno still watches for these changes and restarts the whole process. This is great. But this is not so great if you are actually running more complex project that have some kind of an internal state. And let me show you what I mean by internal state. So I'm gonna add a state variable here, which is gonna be an object, and let's add a call count field here that will be 0. And every time we call this add function, we're going to increment the call count, and maybe we'll print it out so we can see how many times we actually called it. Call count. Okay, so call count, just so we know. Okay, so we run our program, we call add once, and well, it prints that it has been called once, but if I copy paste this 3 times, hopefully the call count will be 3 at the end. And sure enough, call count is 3. But then again, notice that anytime I change something here, so let's actually make this function add A and B, the program is fully restarted and the state is reset because the whole program restarts. And in certain situations, this is not great. So if you're working on a fresh project or on some kind of a front-end project, you don't want your internal state of the app to be reset every time there's a file change, because you might have to click on this button, fill out this form to see some action. It would be nice if the code could be swapped, but the state could be kept. And this is pretty much what hot module replacement allows you to do. So it will, if you change something in a file, Deno and the underlying V8 engine will do their best to patch this code in place while keeping your app intact and still running. So to demonstrate this, let's do something maybe more interesting, like remove all of this. And let's do set interval. So set interval suggests we can have a long-running project to emulate like a long-running app. And every half a second, we're going to console log the add function of 2 plus 3. So add 2 and 3. There we go. Now we've restarted, so call count is increasing. Maybe I'll add another empty line here, so just so we can better see what's going on. Right here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the call count keeps incrementing because we keep this alive in an interval. But what happens if I again change something here in this add function? So let me add b again. Well, the whole program just restarted, the internal state was reset, and call count goes from 0. So let's try to see what happens if instead of watch, we'll use this hot module replacement. So keep in mind, this is a bit unstable because we just shipped it. So The flag is called -- unstable HMR. Once it stabilizes, the unstable prefix will go away, but we'll keep it working for some time. So the process started. Call count is still increasing and addition is happening, but hopefully, if I remove this B here and save the file, the call count should still be incrementing and not reset to 0. And there we go. Deno just said replaced, changed module, and the call count keeps increasing. It was not reset to 0. So obviously, this example is like very minimalistic and bare bones, but instead of this call counts, you might have a store of documents that you just added or deleted or mutated in some way during the operation. And it's so much nicer if this state can be kept around as you're iterating on your code instead of being reset every time. So you have to either automate these mutations in some way or write a script to do this. However, this is not without caveats, but we'll get to the caveats in a moment. One interesting bit about this hot module replacement is that you can actually listen for this hot module replacement events happening. So as most of you probably know, Deno leverages web APIs really heavily. So upon hot module replacement, Deno will just dispatch an event, a web event. This event is called HMR. This might change because we're still iterating on the future, on this feature. And let's just print the event that is dispatched, HMR triggered, and we'll print this event. And let's see what happens. So let me change something here again. So again, I'm gonna just do B. And did I do something wrong? Add event listener, HMR. If I restart it, will it show what I want to show you? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is one of the caveats that I wanted to mention to you. So this is probably printing the whole global scope because like event has a reference to window or something like this. So let me drill down a little bit. I think this is e.detail. And there we go. Where is it? Where is it? Right here. So the event that is dispatched has a detail. This is because this event is an instance of custom events. You can look it up on MDM. And sorry for the wrong typings here. It's a small omission when we landed it. That's because why it's unstable. And this detail object will contain a path field telling you which file was hot patched. So, for example, Fresh will be able to leverage this event listener and notify the browser that, hey, one of the files that you've already loaded has changed. Please refresh it on your site, because Fresh provides you with like the server side that allows you to create islands that are then sent to the browser. So it would be nice if Fresh was able to refresh these islands in place as well when you're iterating on them, instead of having to reload your browser window fully. So yeah, you can expect this to land in Fresh really, really soon. Now onto the caveats, because there is one caveat that's pretty gnarly in some scenarios, and we're looking for ways to solve it. So this hot module replacement doesn't always succeed. There are some certain situations where you just cannot patch the code in place. For example, right now it's not possible to patch the code at the top level of your module. So if we change something here, so main.ts is the file that we're running directly. If we wanted to say, hey, I'm adding 2 + 3, this actually works. Okay, maybe I need something more serious. So let me define another variable here, maybe. And this also works. Okay, what about if I do Deno serve? Return new response. Hello, and hello I, and on every request we're just gonna increment I, hello plus I. Let me disable this one. Sorry. And I'm gonna run with all permissions because I trust my code. So, okay, now we got the server running, so I should be able to do another terminal and do curl. Sure enough, hello, 1, 2, and as we keep hitting the server, it will increment something. So I believe if I try to change something here, for example, say hello world instead. Oh, I guess the caveats I wanted to talk about are not really there. So let's.
Don't you hate it when you think something is broken, but it's actually works?
Yeah, so essentially what I wanted to demo is that sometimes if you try to change something in the top level scope of your module, it will not be possible. Maybe I'll be able to trigger it like this, increment I, and say I++ here, increment I. Go back to this terminal. Haha, yes. I managed to actually trigger this. So if I scroll just a tiny little bit, in this scenario, when we change the top level scope of our module, you can see that it says file change detected restarting, not replacing the module. This is because sometimes the V8 engine will essentially tell us, sorry, I'm just not able to patch this code in place, either because it's at the top level and the function you're trying to replace is not at the top of the call stack at the moment, or you actually might have async function that is long running. For example, you might have timeouts wrapped in, so let's say function async function delay, and let's say timeout. And we do return new promise resolve, and then in this resolve we do set timeout timeout. So if I now run this function, await, delay, and let's say we want to wait for 100 seconds. So the program has restarted again. And now if I try to change this function in any way, like add a console log here, this will not be possible to just hot patch this function. It will instead cause the whole process to restart. And that's because V8, the JavaScript engine, cannot just like replace the code that is currently running and being awaited. Because, how to say it, you might get an inconsistent state. So it's just safer to refuse to do something that might result in completely broken code than try to patch it and give you something that is completely bonkers and you don't know where it's coming from. So yeah, keep in mind there are some caveats to this HMR functionality, but all in all, it should work really nicely and speed up your day-to-day development. Obviously, if you have any suggestions or you encounter any problem with this feature, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to look and fix it. And keep in mind that currently it's only supported in Deno Run, but obviously it would be super nice to have this hot module replacement in Deno Test, so you can iterate on your test faster, which is also something we are going to be looking at adding in the future. Okay, I've been talking way too long about this.
No, the HMR stuff is super important. I think like where a lot of folks will notice it day to day is more so on the fresh side, because like when those files change, like having that experience, like the browser is probably where you're going to have the most state that will be disrupted by like a full refresh. Although like on the server, it's kind of nice too. Like if you're doing any kind of state management in memory, which does happen from time to time, like in web app scenarios, this type of functionality is super useful. Cool. Definitely. And Lots of great questions coming in the chat that are maybe less scope to 138. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate like the last 10 minutes we have here just to kind of dig into
Okay,
general questions. So folks, if you
sure.
do have those, keep putting them in chat, and I'll make sure we have some time at the end to get to those. But before we do that, there is one thing that I thought would be really cool to show and like kind of talk through in depth, which is bring your own node modules. And when we say
Right.
bring your own node modules, we mean managing a local node modules folder within the context of a Deno application and using npm in the way that you would use npm for Node.js development to manage the contents of that folder. And then Deno will essentially respect that, like, okay, there's a node modules folder present, and I'm going to resolve, node modules present there. And there's a lot of reasons why you might do that, but I won't spoil it. I'll turn it over to you, Bartek, to kind of talk through the feature.
Okay, sure. So I like Vite, so I'm going to use Vite as an example here. In like Node world, how you would start a new Vite app is, I believe, is npm init Vite, npm Vite maybe at the latest. Let's try that. Vite project, sure. Let's use vanilla. Let's use TypeScript, and let's go to cd project and npm install. Okay, yeah, it's fast. And now I'm doing npm run dev. Sure enough, this works because I just ran the commands Vite wanted me to that use Node. But let's try to do the same with Deno. So previously with Deno, if you try to, so for those who don't know, Deno can actually recognize the scripts from the packet JSON. So if I do Deno task dev, Deno should be able to pick up this these scripts and try to run Vite. Unfortunately, it starts just linked here that Deno downloaded Vite again and all of the packages that were used by this particular project. So it starts clashing with what I did just before when I did npm install. And starting with this release, Deno can actually reuse the node modules directory that you set up using npm, pnpm, yarn, or whatever. So it essentially makes it much easier to try to migrate your existing node project to Deno, because you can just go to your project and try to run Deno with a single flag and see if that works for you. So let's do just that. I'm going to npm install again. And I'm gonna do Deno run. Let's do -a so we skip all the prompts. And now we have this new flag called unstable BYONM, which means bring your own node modules. And I will do what I will do. I'm gonna skip bells and whistles and just run the directly like this in dev mode. And okay, sorry for that. I believe this is a bug that was reported a couple of days ago, and we already fixed it. So I'm going to try a local build of Deno, and you'll be able to do the same tomorrow with the new patch release. And I need to go one more directory. This will be a bit slower because this is a dev build. And did I do something wrong here? I believe I did. Sorry for that. Like this. There we go. Sorry for that. I did a bit too much magic, and I believe I can just do this with plain Deno as well. Yeah, there we go. So there was no installation step this time, and to prove it, I'm going to remove node modules once more and do npm install once again, and run this once again. And to prove it even more, I'm going to edit this file directly. I believe my VS Code has a setting that essentially doesn't want to search through node modules. So I'm going to go into the installed Vite module, and I'm just going to add a console log here to prove you, hello from Vite, that Deno is indeed running this directly from the node modules. And there we go, hello from Vite. So This was absolutely not possible before this release. There were some hoops you had to jump through, or always tried to be the one managing your node modules installation. Now with this release, you can just specify this flag, or you can actually also specify this in Deno JSON files. So if I open or create Deno JSON and say unstable, which by the way, this is also a brand new feature. Now you can specify granularly which unstable features you want to opt in. You can do so in the config file. So I'm saying the unstable features I want to enable is bring your own node modules. And if I run this again without the unstable BYONM flag, there we go. Still runs, and it still uses the local node modules installation that was done using npm, but you can also use pnpm or yarn. So you can essentially drop into your existing project and run Deno there. So once again, if I just remove node modules and I npm install again, the edited vite file is now gone. And if I run it again, yeah, it's been reinstalled, and Deno is just using the node modules directory that is provided by a separate package manager. So this is yet another effort we undertook to meet our users and JavaScript developers halfway, so they can migrate piece by piece, project by project. They can try Deno in only particular places in their code base. So maybe you'd prefer to use Deno Test Runner instead of relying on any other third-party tool that you need to have installed in every single project. Now you have a relatively simple way of trying that and seeing if that brings you any joy or makes you more productive.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm pretty stoked about too is there's a decent amount of tools in the Node ecosystem that are really heavily dependent and built around like the specific mechanics of how npm manages packages, installs modules. Like maybe there are modules dependent on like a post install script, which is still something that doesn't exist, like when Deno automatically installs npm packages, or like Tailwind CSS is maybe an example too of a module where it expects post CSS to also be installed and present within the node modules folder, and that behavior really only happens when you install the packages through npm. So there might be a few scenarios and a few like compatibility issues that you'll find are actually gone because you're managing the node modules directly yourself, like through pnpm or whatever package manager you would use anyway. And then when you run the process through Node with this option, or through Deno, excuse me, with this option, a lot of the things that maybe didn't work before will just work because you're managing the packages in the way they expect.
And keep in mind, it's not like we're now saying to you, just use npm, pnpm, or yarn. You can still let Deno manage the node modules directory, or not even put node modules, local node modules directory there. In scenarios that work for you, if you use npm colon specifiers because you just need to pull one or two packages and don't want to hassle with package JSON or specifying a lot of flags, you can still do it, and you're totally encouraged to do so. But in those specific scenarios where you have an existing project that might have been in development for a couple years or more than a couple years, it's just a new way to dip your toes into Deno and try Deno on your project. Then again, you don't have to dive head on and try to run everything with Deno. You can now try to run this piece by piece. Maybe you have a certain script in your project that you'd like to automate using Deno instead of Node, or you might want to run some benchmarks using built-in Deno bench, or run tests, or whatever you come up with. Now you just have another way, another escape hatch to try and make this migration way, way easier than it was before.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely worth trying, like, especially if you're someone who has like tried to kind of drop in Deno with an existing Node project and found it didn't quite work the way you expected before. There's an excellent chance that this has solved a lot of your problems. So definitely worth giving it another look if you haven't already. So again, coming up to the last 10 minutes here, we'll see if we have a time for a few more demos to sneak in before the top of the hour. But for the folks hanging out live, I did want to take an opportunity to answer some of the not 138 related questions, which are totally fair. And one of them was, is there a future where we build React apps without NPM? And I think that's kind of an interesting question, because there's actually quite a few React or ways to interact with React today in Deno that don't require NPM. But yeah, I mean, high level thoughts on this question.
Short answer is yes, with a huge asterisk. So I'm not a front-end developer, but if I needed to do something simple in React, I would probably opt in to pull React from a CDN like ESN/SH or Unpackage or any other. But then again, my project would probably be very minimal with one or two other dependencies. If you need to pull a UI framework or component library, this might get harder, and I'm not sure if the ecosystem is ready to do such a drastic switch, or if ever it will be ready to do such a drastic switch. But then again, I'm not a front-end developer, so this is a very superficial answer from my side. There are other team members on our team that would be way more, have more merit to answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I feel like there's just so much of the React ecosystem that exists on NPM. It's very difficult to imagine a scenario where you'll kind of be forever free of interacting with NPM at all. I think probably what you'll see is that interactions with NPM, like through Deno, are just going to become a little bit easier, a little more natural as time goes on. So it won't feel like you have to kind of switch back into the Node or NPM world to kind of use these use the bits of this ecosystem. Like BYONM is one kind of example of this. I think like the new registry that we're working on for 2.0 is going to also make interaction with Node and NPM modules quite a bit easier and a little more ergonomic for Deno applications. So yeah, I would suspect like NPM maybe isn't going to go away, but those lines will become maybe very blurry to the point where maybe it doesn't matter that sometimes packages are being pulled in from NPM instead. Other question that we had coming in. So this one is about a technology that I'm not super familiar with, which is, what do we recommend for getting observability metrics into Prometheus? And I wonder if this is a tech stack you've worked with before, Bartek.
I don't think I can answer this question precisely. I believe there are some SDKs that allow you to talk to Prometheus, probably available on NPM. So there's a good chance you could just import them directly in Deno and push as you were doing this in Node.
Yeah, that I also have not. I'm familiar with the technology, but no, I haven't used it extensively. So that'd be where I'd start too. Is most of the Node client libraries should just work from a Deno perspective. And if they don't, definitely let us know because we should fix that.
Yeah.
Other questions coming in. So this is definitely more of like a fresh question that we could send in Marvin's direction. But are there any updates we could share on sort of ecosystem integrations, like having Storybook support, say, in a fresh application? And this, maybe the two of us aren't super qualified to answer, but I wonder if you have any scuttlebutt on this to share, Bartek.
I definitely heard about this topic being raised in context of Fresh, so this is definitely on Marvin's radar. But I don't want to speak for Marvin here as he's setting the roadmap for Fresh. So we are aware of this, and Marvin, the maintainer of Fresh, is aware of this. However, I don't have any concrete dates for this.
Yep. But I would sort of plus one that a lot of the sort of macro level feedback we see for Fresh is around ecosystem and just parts of, the JavaScript ecosystem that you sort of take for granted if you're using like a Nuxt or, a Next.js or something, still need to kind of make their way into Fresh development, whether it's like static asset builds with Vite, say, or like just various parts of the ecosystem. So I would expect to kind of see those things trickle in over time for sure. Another small question, when will 2.0 be released? Bartek, can you give us an exact date time when
No,
2.0
I cannot
is
give
coming
you
up?
an exact date. I can give you a blurry date, which is gonna be 2023, most likely Q1 or Q2. I mean, Q1 or Q2,
2024.
but yeah, 2024, but no concrete dates set in stone yet. It's been a bit of a moving target, but I promise you the wait is gonna be perfect.
For sure. So yeah, that is kind of what we're targeting. The big sort of things that we want to make sure we get right, as I understand it, are like the new registry user experience, like sort of managing dependencies in the Deno project is definitely one of the things we've seen as a major point of feedback. And we want to make sure that developer experience is super dialed in, and we're maybe not quite there yet. And like very broad, very deep node compatibility is very important to us.
Yes.
And so we're continuing to push down that path before we feel comfortable sort of minting a 2.0.
Yeah, and just to clarify, don't expect that Deno 2 is gonna be like Python 2 and Python 3, where there's a huge rift how one version works and the other. Most of the work we release with every minor release these days is foundation and stepping stones for Deno 2. So they bring your own node modules feature that we demoed earlier during this session is one of these building blocks for Deno 2, which will just make interoperating or backwards compatible Deno much more better than it was a few months back. So there are some exciting features that are not publicly visible yet, but they are in the works. But think of this as an evolution, maybe a big evolution, but not a huge revolution where projects that work with Deno 1.x will not work with Deno 2 without changes.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things, just to sort of preempt one of those questions that I see a lot in the community, is like, will HTTP imports just like not be supported anymore? Is that something that, and as of this point, like that's not something that's going to happen. Like you'll still be able to use that model where it makes sense.
Yeah, they have a perfectly valid use case, though.
Absolutely.
There are some problems with HTTP imports, but people who use them in particular contexts are super happy with the solution because it's the simplest there is, and they will continue to work.
Yep, totally. A bigger question, which is a little more KV related. So, how to approach like user uploads that are a little bit larger. And KV definitely is a little small, or like the upper limit for what you can store in any as any value is a little small for these. I mean, lots of different ways to approach this, of course. So like the AWS SDK does actually work and deploy these days. So that would be one thing to look at doing if you want to do uploads directly to S3. Also, like we have been sort of looking at potentially doing a object storage API in a similar way to like how we support queues and KV storage today. So that might be something to look to the future. But yeah, Bartek, what other kind of advice would you throw out there generally?
I think you summed it up pretty much how you should approach it. Use an AWS SDK or GCP SDK. As for the can deploy help proxy route to the nearest S3 service, I am not sure. I think this would be handled pretty much transparently when you try to upload something, but don't take my word for granted here. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say like because the compatibility with object storage, like infrastructure providers should certainly work on deploy without too much intervention. That would be kind of the path that I would look. Yeah, Deno blob storage, Andreas. That's something of that ilk. I suspect is something that we will hack on and be able to think about at some point in the future. Any last questions before we get going? We have arrived at the top of the hour, but if somebody is fast, they can sneak in one more before we sign off. So I'll look at the chat. But maybe to give people some time to type. Is there like a feature of 138 that you're particularly proud of, Bartek, that like you think is pretty sweet that people really need to check out?
I'm proud of them all. I can't say anything else as a team leader here. HMR is definitely at the top of the usability list. HTML doc generation is probably people will find useful in many contexts, though it still needs to evolve a little bit. Bring your own node modules just drastically lowers the barrier to try Deno in existing node project. There's one feature that we haven't really mentioned during this call, but you will hear about it, I believe, this week or next week in greater more detail and during the freshest release. And as always, there's just a plethora of other improvements, whether to Deno APIs itself, to web compatibility. Yeah, there's just circling back to what you said at the very beginning. This is not the biggest release since you joined. This is the biggest minor release ever since Deno 1.0. Like, I can tell this for sure that we haven't had such a big release yet, and we had a few big releases. So hopefully this will be a norm these days because we switched to a 6-week development cycle instead of 4. That gives us a little more leeway to finish up the features we were working on and actually deliver them in a more timely fashion.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's definitely a lot to explore. Like I linked the blog post before. Definitely make sure to check those out. I'll say for my part, like I continue to love to see like just community members coming in and kind of dunking on a few really cool features. Like in the VS Code plugin, for example, like the task view was a community contribution to the VS Code plugin. And there have been a few like just really clutch community additions to the entire ecosystem of tools. So kind of look out, like a lot of times we'll shout out the people that committed specific features. So there's a few of those in the blog post to check out as well. Well, then, seeing no additional questions through the chat, we'll probably wrap it up here and get back to it. But Bartek, thank you very much for hanging out. And to everybody who's hanging out live in the chat, thank you for all the questions. We love to discuss these bits with you. For everybody watching the recording, appreciate you hanging out as well. And be sure to join us in the Discord where we'll kind of be talking about these recordings and these live broadcasts in the future. But yeah, thanks to everybody very much for hanging out. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.